What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about the Sharps Rifle Company Reliabolt and Balanced Bolt Carrier Group. This is an interesting set of components that you might want to think about if you are either unhappy with your current bolt carrier group or you're in the process of building an AR and you want some pretty nice premium components. There are a lot of reasons to consider this setup right here. We'll talk all about those throughout the review. Stick around.
So let's talk about the Reliabolt and the Balanced Bolt Carrier Group and sort of why these two pieces are actually quite unusual and quite special as you're shopping around for your bolt carrier group or your bolt, why you might want to consider these above some of the other ones that are out there. There's really some interesting design points and also materials and coating used here. So let's get into that. Let's start with sort of the materials and the coating. S7 is the material they're using for this. This is a type of steel that's supposed to be considerably stronger, about 75% increase in tensile strength and like a 60% improvement in yield strength over the mil-spec Carpenter 158 steel, which you typically get, I believe is what we have here in this Smith & Wesson bolt carrier group, as well as this Ares Armor bolt carrier group. Now this one is phosphate coated. I think this one is nickel boron coated. So the material obviously is different. It's more of a standard, the Carpenter material, whereas the S7, as I said, is supposed to be a much tougher steel. Now let's talk about the coating. The coating on these is where we're really reaching into some pretty special territory, okay? The phosphate and the nickel boron, they're fine. I haven't had any problems with those types of coatings, and most of you probably never have or ever will. However, if you get to some of these situations where you're either dealing with salt water or just a high corrosive environment, it would be really nice to have something extremely corrosion resistant, and that's what you get with NP3 Plus coating, which you have on both the Reliabolt and the Balanced Bolt Carrier Group. So the NP3 Plus coating, if you look at it just as far as color and tone, compared to the nickel boron, is a bit more drab, a bit more gray, not such a chrome look to it. I don't think that it's any more slick. It feels pretty similar. However, it is definitely a different coating, and from what I understand, if I got this right, NP3 Plus is roughly 10 times better for corrosion resistance than something like the nickel boron. 10 times better in corrosion resistance. That is really, really phenomenal. The price on this, by the way, if I haven't mentioned that yet, I might as well throw that out there now. $200 on that full bolt carrier group. That is not that bad when you're talking about premium BCGs, all right? You can definitely spend that much and more easily out there if you're looking for something that is not just, perhaps a nickel boron coated or better. You can, like I said, you can definitely spend that much. And to get some of the design features that you get with these two pieces, that's where I think that this one stands out and really becomes worth the money. So let's talk about some of those design features that you get from both the Balanced Bolt Carrier Group and the Reliabolt. And why don't we start with the Reliabolt, which you can tell I've already taken out of the Bolt Carrier Group. So let's begin with that and talk about how this is different from your standard bolt, why it is more special, why it is intended to be more reliable, and why you will likely see well, I would say that the average user won't see a huge difference because the average user is not going to put multiple thousands of rounds in, sort of one outing, or get into a gunfight with this bolt or any of that kind of stuff. the serious abuse that you're likely to, or that this type of a bolt is intended to help you survive or get through, is not likely to be experienced by very many of us. Okay, so that's one point we should point out. However, if you want sort of the best potential performance that you can get, this is where you want to look. Now here's what we're going to look at here. Here's the difference. Now you can see on this standard bolt carrier group, this one from Smith & Wesson, squared off lugs that interface just fine with the barrel extension, and it seems to work just fine. However, there is a potential there because of that squared off shape. There's a potential for improvement, and that's basically what we've got with the Reliabolt. Why is this an improvement over that? Well, again, in those really extreme scenarios, you could look at a very dirty barrel face, and so you're looking at the barrel extension getting completely full of debris, and you might be having a hard time having those lugs lock up properly. And if there is debris in there, there's really no room for error. You know what I'm saying? There's no slop. There's no give. So that's kind of the potential issue with the standard bolt face. What you have on the Reliabolt, and you can see that very clearly, you've been able to see it by now, is are rounded off lugs that will push past debris that might be obstructing any of that space. And if there is lots of debris there in the barrel extension, it will still lock up properly. It'll still get in there and do its job. Again, because it gives you that, that, for lack of a better word, slop, that space, that lower tolerance in a sense. This is the reason why we talk about the AK platform and say it's very reliable, is because the tolerances are kind of loose, right? It's room for things, there's room for error, there's room for debris, and it's able to continue working, even though you have some of those obstructions. And the Reliabolt provides you with that same type of experience. If you decide that you just want the bolt and you don't want the brand new bolt carrier group because you're happy with the bolt carrier group you have, you can get into just the Reliabolt for about $80. Magnetic particle inspected, high pressure tested, shot peened, all that stuff. It's designed to perform under great pressure. Okay, so let's set this aside. You understand pretty much everything I can point out about the Reliabolt. Let's move on to the balanced bolt carrier group, which is also a pretty interesting design. Okay, you can see if you're familiar with your standard bolts, your bolt carriers, you can see some differences here. You can definitely see some differences here, and I'll point them out here in a second. But we can also talk about, the material again is S7 on that, NP3 coating, or NP3 plus coating, which again, about 10 times better corrosion resistance than things like this right here. Outstanding. Why did they go ahead and build a new bolt carrier group? Why did they need to? It seems like the bolt would do everything they needed, or SRC, they thought, that Reliabolt is doing everything we need it to do. Well, but they just decided, let's see if we can improve on the standard bolt carrier. And I believe they have, or at least, once again, they have potentially made a better bolt carrier or more reliable bolt carrier. I say that because in most cases, folks just aren't going to see a difference. They're going to feel like this one works fine or that one works fine, and why spend all the extra money? What it comes down to is, if you're building a new AR, or if you do end up finding that breaking point, that wearing out point, where you actually feel like the standard stuff just isn't doing the job for you, that's when you start looking for something a little more premium, a little more designed with a lot more better features. Anyway, so let's get into this and talk about how it is different from your standard bolt carrier. Well, we can set these two next to each other, and there's a couple of things that jump out at us right away. And some of them are somewhat inconsequential, but I'll point it out anyways. The scallops you see here on the side, they don't come up as far on the SRC as they do on that Smith & Wesson. Now these scallops, of course, interact with your forward assist right here. And that means if basically this one, you can push it forward with that forward assist from a further back position than you can this one. That said, in the rare situations where I've actually used a bolt or the forward assist, it's been because this is so close to the front, or this is so close to the actual front and interfacing there with the barrel extension, and it just needs that slight extra push. And so you're really kind of pushing way back here somewhere. You're not really touching on any of these ones up here. Almost never will. So are the scallops, the fewer scallops, a problem? Not at all, in my opinion. Not at all. All right, so that's one issue we can, or one difference we can point out for sure. Now, we could also talk about sort of what their idea was in designing this new bolt carrier. Why did they decide we needed a new bolt carrier group? Well, some of the shortcomings they said that they found, or two primary issues were, one, the rotational camming of the carrier during the unlocking portion of the operational cycle, and the second thing is the canting of the bolt carrier group upon firing due to the gas coming into the gas key, which naturally causes the front to kind of come up a little bit and slide backwards. If you've got any slop there in your receiver, that's what's going to happen. This is going to want to kind of go like this, right? So they set out to sort of change that and give you a bolt carrier group that would not cam so much and would not rise up so much in its motion. It's difficult for me to point out how and why it's not going to do that as well. It's also hard for me to say that I've noticed the difference. It's very difficult to sort of point out those little minuscule differences between one bolt and the next. I can't really see the difference in how that balances, in how that does not, tip up as much or cam as much or whatever. It's difficult to really feel the difference. But it makes sense that you can engineer a bolt carrier group so that it does not lift up so much, and it does not try to rotate there within the upper receiver so much. It makes a lot of sense. And if you can do that, why not do it? So once again, what we've got here, both in the Reliabolt and the new balanced bolt carrier group, is a premium package. Okay, this is what you're going to be interested in getting if you're building a new AR and you have $200 in your budget for your bolt and your bolt carrier group, and you're thinking, yeah, I want a really high quality one. I want something that's unusual, that does the job a little bit better than your standard bolts and bolt carrier groups will. And that's just what I want. That's what I need. Let's go for it. Or if you are in that particular situation, that rare situation where your gear is just getting to the point that you've got to upgrade in order to get the performance you need. Could be you're doing some serious competitive shooting, could be you're doing something even more serious than that. Whatever the case, if that's you, if that's your situation, the Sharps Reliabolt and Balanced Bolt Carrier Group are definitely some pieces you ought to look at.
So to sum up, if you guys are looking for a new bolt carrier group, either to go into a brand new AR build or to replace a bolt carrier group that you're currently not happy with for whatever reason, the Sharps Rifle Company Reliabolt and Balanced Bolt Carrier Group are definitely interesting things to look at. You ought to consider them. They're made of premium materials. They do come in at sort of a premium price, but still pretty comparable to other premium components out there. So definitely worth looking at. Also, the design is quite different and quite interesting compared to other bolt carrier groups. And really, they make a good argument for all those design tweaks and changes, and I definitely see how they can be an improvement over the existing and current AR design. Now, I still have somewhat minimal experience with this particular component, having only put maybe 300 or so rounds through that bolt carrier group, but it's been flawless, and that's a good sign. That's been my review. I'm the Late Boy Scout. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you.
How did they get ripped out? Well, here's the story. Here's what I did. Very, very stupid, but it also demonstrates or sort of illustrates one of the potential limitations of the keymod system.